I've got a really bad feeling about this West Ham game tomorrow night. I fear that all of Tottenham's chickens are going to come home to roost when it comes to our inability to defend set pieces. But welcome to the Spurred On podcast. I'll be talking about that more later in the episode. But first off, I'm going to come with some thoughts about that Luton 2-1 win. It's Easter Monday. I hope you're all having a great Easter and enjoying the fact that we got another 3 points in the Premier League, despite the fact it was a very difficult game to get over the line. However, that is what the Premier League is all about. So after a couple of days of mulling it over and watching the game back, I wanted to discuss a couple of things with you. First up, Kulusevski. I know he's a player that currently is dividing opinion amongst Spurs fans. For me, there is no doubting his talent. I think he has got the ability to make it as one of the greatest players Tottenham have had in the Premier League era. I know that some of you are thinking, what are you talking about? He doesn't even have the pace to beat his man. But for me, I don't think he is a right winger. I think he could really challenge James Maddison for that kind of 8-10 spot. And he's kind of a little bit wasted out wide. And what really happened at the weekend, I don't know if you saw it, but just as we were losing going into half-time, Ange Postecoglou looked absolutely livid on the sidelines and pointed back to his subs bench, presumably at Brennan Johnson, to say, get warmed up, get ready, you're coming on. And that for me was because Kulusevski, all that first half, was playing too narrow and getting in James Maddison's areas. And in the second half, we saw Johnson came on. He really got his boots white. Chalk on his boots is the phrase that's used, because he stayed out wide and he set up the 2 goals as a result. So it's an interesting dilemma for Ange Postecoglou going into this West Ham game. I still think he likes to play Kulusevski from the start. Kulusevski is one of the only players we've got actually who can hold the ball up in that forward line, because he uses his great strength, his low centre of gravity, and I like to describe it as like his big butt, which he uses to hold the ball up, doesn't let defenders get the ball. But Ange will be saying to him, if you're going to start against West Ham, I need you to stay wide and keep away from the areas that Maddison should really be patrolling and getting the ball in those spaces so we can make chances from that kind of 8-10 position. Let me know in the comments what you think of Kulusevski. I know he's getting a little bit of stick from Spurs fans at the moment, but I think it's maybe a result of the fact that he's not perfect for that position, and maybe he wishes he was a bit more central, and that's why he's kind of drifting narrow, which is not what Ange Postecoglou wants. Next thing I wanted to talk about was something that I think goes a little under the radar in victories like that against Luton, and that is the importance of some of the saves that Vicario is making for us. There are a couple of saves in that game, specifically the one where he came out and punched a corner away and it landed at the feet of the Luton player and he hit it and it was going right in the corner. And no shade on Hugo Lloris, although his form did drop off in his last few seasons at Spurs, but he would not have made it to that save because he just wasn't big enough. But Vicario gets his 6-foot kind of 4 frame down there, makes a vital save. I'm pretty sure that was at 1-1, and we would have gone 2-1 behind again, and I think it would have been incredibly difficult for us to come back from that. So props to Vicario for keeping concentrating. He didn't have a whole lot to do. They didn't put a lot of pressure on us in that game, Luton, but there were a few saves there, and he often comes up with a few vital saves at vital times. He's been a really unbelievably good signing for Tottenham Hotspur, and of course made his Italy full debut last week, keeping out Donnarumma, and from everything I've heard in Italy he did a good job. And although Donnarumma I think is nailed on to break the Italian caps record, they've got an amazing backup to him in Vicario, who is just getting better and better and better. The other thing I wanted to talk about, this is a general thing really, but obviously did affect us in the Luton game as well. Porro is playing really well in that inverted fullback role. However, we need to get him in more positions where he can shoot from outside the box. He's got an amazing shot on him. We saw it last year against Manchester United. We saw it against Burnley this season. But he's not getting in enough areas where he's having any shots during the game. And I think that's something we could really benefit from more. Most of the goals we're scoring at the moment, I'd say maybe as much as 80-85% of the goals we're scoring are that same move, a little 1-2 or getting the player in the byline and getting the ball across to the back post forward. But let's do something a little bit different. Try and get Porro in some of those positions where he can hit some shots, maybe get some deflections. Let's not forget that first West Ham game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium earlier this season. That goal they scored because they had a shot from outside the box. It deflected off 2 of our defenders, and then they scored because it went through to their striker. We're not having enough shots from outside the box, and I really want to see Pedro Porro specifically, and James Maddison actually, with opportunities to hit it from outside the box. low blocks. It's going to be a low block against West Ham tomorrow. So there should be some opportunities for us from about 20, 25 yards to have a dig. I want to see more of that. Finally, just talking about that Luton game, it was a real example, especially when we went 1-0 down and Luton sat back, of how Sonny and James Maddison are both coming incredibly deep to get the ball at the moment. Both of them coming to the halfway line at times. Now, I don't mind so much when Maddison does it. I get it. He's the kind of quarterback. He's the lock picker. We want him on the ball and he wants to get things going. But when Sonny's coming to the halfway line to pick up the ball, that for me is a complete waste of his skill set. We need him up in that 9. We need him to offer positions and offer little runs in behind so that Madders can find him, even against those low blocks. I know it's difficult. So that's something, if I were Ange going over that game again, I would be saying to Sonny, I know you want to get on the ball. I know you feel like you're not getting on the ball enough, but be patient. Wait up there to get it and your chances will come. So let's talk more specifically about that West Ham game tomorrow night. Like I said at the top, I've got a really bad feeling about it. Before I go into some of the numbers and the stats, thank you so much for watching and listening, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, please do go to the podcast platforms, be that Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Give me a little subscribe or a follow there. It really helps, and vice versa. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, come to youtube.com/@BarnabySlater_. Press subscribe, drop this video a like. Really helps. I want to get to as many Tottenham Hotspur fans as possible. I really appreciate all of your engagement and comments, guys. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can be a Spurred On Pro member or a Patreon member. All the information in the description boxes. Only £1 a month. Really appreciate your support, guys. So, the West Ham game, the London Stadium, their cup final. I'm afraid and ashamed to say I used to do a little bit of work for West Ham, so I know what it's like from within, and it's all about this game for them. It's all the fans care about, really, at the moment. They're on an amazing Europa League run. They won the Europa Conference League last year, but they want their manager out. It's like the Conte and Mourinho situation at Spurs, but the difference is they actually won a trophy. It's weird how unrealistic I think West Ham fans can be, but it doesn't matter because tomorrow night it'll be a full house. The fans will have been drinking for hours. It'll be a raucous atmosphere, and I think it's a huge shame actually that we have to play them in a night game just after Easter, when in fact we could have got a bit more lucky and played them after a Europa League game on a Sunday when they had a Thursday, Sunday. I think we've been unfortunate, so that's one of the reasons I've got a bad feeling about it. I'll go into the other reasons in a minute, but let's talk about their form. They're in 7th place in the league on 44 points. They're 4 points behind Man United, but they have played a game more. Overall, they've won 12, drawn 8, lost 10. However, their home form is not as good as their overall form. They're 10th in the home form table, having won 6, drawn 6, and lost 3. Let me go into their most recent home results. 1-1 against Aston Villa. You'd say that's probably a decent result, the way that Emery's Villa have been playing this season. And they're decent away, Aston Villa, as we saw at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium earlier this season. However, some bad results before that. 2-2 home to Burnley. They did get a win, 4-2 against Brentford, good result, but before that, they got done 6 by Arsenal, 6-0. Arsenal were on a great period of form and scoring loads of goals at the time, but you cannot be losing 6-0 at home and in a London derby. So the fans were not happy about that. Then before that, they drew 1-1 with Bournemouth and 0-0 at home to Brighton. So not brilliant form for West Ham at home. However, I do think that kind of bad form will be nullified by the fact it's a night game, it's their cup final. The fans will be really up for it. But if Tottenham could score an early goal, then I think the fans would turn on West Ham. And that for me is how we could go about winning this game. Can we get an early goal, the fans turn, and then nick another one and make it incredibly difficult for them? Don't forget, at the weekend, they were 3-1 up at St James's Park. It was proper Moyes ball. Proper Moyes ball. Sit back, hit them on the break, hit them with set pieces. And that's something I'm worried about when it comes to Spurs. Not only the set-piece delivery of James Ward-Prowse, although I'm super worried about that because of our inability this season to get our heads on the first ball and second ball at corners. That's something that Dragusin has actually improved for us since he's been in the team, but I highly expect Van der Ven to be back in the team. But the other danger is really the pace of Jared Bowen and Kudus in behind Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro. I really fear for us on the set-piece front and on their break. They will sit back and then they will hit us with trying to get long balls over into the channels for Kudus and Bowen. And Antonio, I think, will play as well. He's just got fit again. And as we know, him and Thomas Souček always score for West Ham against Spurs. It's a script that's written. It always happens. So those are my fears. I'm sorry to come across a bit negative. As you know, if you watch my channel, I was very positive about the Luton game. I thought we'd turn them over very easily, 3 or 4-0. I was completely wrong. So I'm highly happy to be completely wrong here as well. But I think it's West Ham's cup final. I think they'll be really up for it. They'll play deep, exactly how Moyes wants them. And unless we can get an early goal and really get the crowd on their backs, I think we may struggle. My team for tomorrow night is Vicario, Pedro Porro, Destiny Udogie. I think Van de Ven will come back in. He was on the bench against Luton and didn't get any minutes. And I think that was because Ange was saving him for West Ham. Christian Romero, I think he'll stick with Basuma because we need that player on the half turn to take the ball off our centre halves and off our keeper. Sarr, I think, will stay in the team. Maddison, I think it'll be Werner will stay in the team on the left, even though some corner of the Spurs fan base won't like that. Sonny in the 9, and I think Kulusevski will start for his hold-up ability, but I think if he doesn't stay out wide and give us more of an option than he did against Luton, then once again he will come off and Brennan Johnson will be asked to come back on and push in behind West Ham to get some of those chances like he did with the assists he brilliantly made against Luton. Thank you guys once again for watching and listening. Do press that like and subscribe button. Let me know in the comments what you think the scores will be, whether you think maybe Pierre-Emile Højbjerg could come in for Bissouma, or if I've got the team wrong, let me know. Once again, huge game at West Ham tomorrow night. I'm worried about it. I fear we may lose 3-2 with potentially 1 or 2 goals coming from set pieces. But like I said, I hope I'm wrong. And maybe it's just because I'm hungover after a big Easter weekend. Most importantly, come on you Spurs.